So the first step that we want to do to create our linear search algorithm is to set up our function. So let's create one called linear search that returns an integer, and it will take in two parameters, an array of integers, we'll call it A, and the value that we're searching for, which is X. And to get rid of this red squiggly line, let's go ahead and do our last step, which is to return the answer. That's going to be the name of our variable, which we will now define in step 1. Int answer equals -1. And now we go on to step 2 and do the main work of iterating through with a for loop. I'll just type in the word for and hit tab, and a nice snippet gets invoked, so I don't have to type everything in manually. So now the only thing that I'll need to modify is just add the letter A and a period to reflect the length. Capitalization matters. So we're going to iterate through this for as long as I is less than the length of the array, at which point we check to see if the array index at I is equal to our value that we're searching for. If that is the case, we assign that value to our variable answer. And this should do it. Now, there's an issue here, though, and I'm not sure if you caught it or not. But what's happening is that while we're iterating through, when we find our answer, the iteration will continue till we reach the end of the array. And that's not good. I mean, we're already dealing with an algorithm that's not going to be too efficient. This makes it even worse. So to improve this, we want to exit from iterating once we find our value. So really, all we need to do, we can actually just get rid of step 1 here, and instead change the final step, which will just delete this comment here, to returning -1 only when we don't find our value. And once we do find our value, we return it, and that will be I. So basically, we are jumping right into the iteration, and once we find our value, we return it. If not, we're going to ultimately return -1. So that looks good. Now let's go ahead and make it work. I'll start off with a value that I want to search for, and I'll call it the value, and it's going to be the lucky number 7. Next, I will define an array of integers. We'll call it array, create a new instance of it, and I'll drop in some values here. And then the next step will be to write out the contents of the array to the console. That's just to visually see what we're working with. So I'll do write line. Our array contains, and I'll use the same technique to write out the content. The compiler is complaining because we actually need to import the namespace that's needed to invoke for each, and that is using a system. I just hit the control key and period while I had focus on the word array, and now it brought in the namespace at the top here on line 1, and we can continue. So now I'll write in some more content to the console that just says, after adding a couple of new lines, the result of our linear search is the value. And then we call what matters, which is the linear search function. So write line, and let's call our function linear search, and pass in our array that we just set up, along with the value that we're searching for. This is a neat trick, by the way, when you need to break the line. If you just go right in the middle of the string and hit enter with the latest version of C#, it adds the plus sign. It's smart enough to concatenate it for you, which I really appreciate. But now we can go ahead and execute our code. We'll save, build, Make sure that our project is set as the default to start up. And we're about to run. Let's look at our value. It's 7. And in the index position, it should be 0, 1, 2, 3. Let's see if that happens. Control F5. Our ARRA, that's a typo there. 1, 4, 5, 7. The result of our linear search for 7 is 3, and that's correct. Let me go ahead and fix that typo. Our array contains. That looks much better. And that's all.